The story of Kleiner Perkins venture capital. How they turned $8 million into $100 billion. In the summer of 1972, when venture capital was still an exotic concept and Silicon Valley was nothing more than apricot orchards dotted with a few semiconductor companies, two men made a bet that would reshape the entire technology industry. Tom Perkins, a brilliant engineer who had just made his fortune building the first commercially viable laser at Hewlett-Packard, sat across from Eugene Kleiner, one of the legendary traitorous eight who founded Fairchild Semiconductor. Together, they would raise $8 million to start what would become the most influential venture capital firm in history. That firm, Kleiner Perkins, would go on to fund over 900 companies across 5 decades, creating an estimated $650 billion in market value and birthing entire industries that did not exist when they started. Their portfolio reads like a history of the digital age. Amazon, Google, Genentech, Netscape, Sun Microsystems, Compaq, AOL, Electronic Arts, Twitter, Slack, and dozens of other companies that have become household names. But this is not just a story about picking winners. It is about how two entrepreneurs invented the modern playbook for venture capital. They incubated companies within the firm, eliminated risk systematically, and provided hands-on operational support that went far beyond writing checks. It is about legendary home runs that returned billions and spectacular failures that nearly destroyed the firm's reputation. It is about succession struggles, the rise and fall of clean tech dreams, gender discrimination lawsuits, and an epic comeback that saw the firm reinvent itself for the AI era. By 2024, Kleiner Perkins had raised 21 venture capital funds and 6 growth funds, managing over $10 billion in committed capital. Their latest funds raised over $2 billion in total, demonstrating that after more than 5 decades, limited partners still believed this Silicon Valley institution could identify the next generation of transformative companies. The story begins not in 1972, but in 1969, in the corridors of Hewlett-Packard, where Tom Perkins was running the company's nascent computer division. David Packard, one of HP's legendary founders, had tapped Perkins to lead the charge into computing, a bold move for a company known for oscilloscopes and measurement equipment. "Dave Packard taught me everything I ever learned about entrepreneurship," Perkins would later say. But Perkins had an entrepreneurial itch that HP could not scratch. While still working at HP, he had invented a cheap, reliable laser and spun it out into a company called University Laboratories. The venture made him independently wealthy and gave him first-hand experience in what it took to build a company from scratch. By 1972, Perkins had made his fortune, but he was restless. The computer business was growing explosively, as he would later recall, compounding at 30 to 40% per quarter. He did not want to just watch from the sidelines. He wanted to help build the next wave of technology companies. But he knew he could not do it alone. Enter Eugene Kleiner. One of the traitorous 8 who had walked out on William Shockley in 1957 to found Fairchild Semiconductor, Kleiner was Silicon Valley royalty. Fairchild had essentially created the semiconductor industry, and Kleiner had been there from the beginning. By 1972, he was semi-retired but looking for a new challenge. Through Sanford Robertson, a San Francisco investment banker, Perkins and Kleiner were introduced. The pairing was perfect. Perkins brought operational expertise, connections from HP, and a deep understanding of how to scale technology businesses. Kleiner brought semiconductor industry credibility, technical knowledge, and a network of engineers and entrepreneurs who would become the founding teams of portfolio companies. Together, they raised their first fund in January 1973. $8 million, sourced partly from Rockefeller University and other institutional investors who were just beginning to see venture capital as a legitimate asset class. Founded in 1972 by Tom Perkins and Eugene Kleiner, the firm established its headquarters at 2750 Sand Hill Road in Menlo Park, California. This was the very first venture capital firm to establish an office on what would become the most famous address in venture capital. Unlike traditional venture capitalists who simply provided capital and sat on boards, Perkins and Kleiner wanted to be operators. They would work alongside entrepreneurs, help them hire teams, eliminate risks systematically, and even incubate companies within the firm before spinning them out. Perkins later told the New York Times his two criteria for investment. First, insight into an emerging new market, and second, competitive advantage through technology. Then they would methodically try to eliminate risk in all areas: technological, financial, operational, and market risk. This systematic approach to risk elimination would become the foundation of their investment philosophy and a key differentiator from other venture capitalists who simply bet on charismatic founders without methodical de-risking. The first fund invested in 18 companies. 8 were outright losers. Advanced Recreation Equipment Corporation, launching a combination snowmobile motorcycle, chose the worst possible timing, right as the Arab oil embargo crushed the off-road vehicle market. A tennis shoe reselling company went nowhere. A waste treatment company failed. The failures made one thing clear: their expertise was in high technology, not consumer products or industrial businesses. But 2 investments would change everything. James Trabig had worked for Perkins at HP. Together, they conceived Tandem, a company building fail-safe computers that used redundant systems to ensure continuous operation. This was crucial for banks, airlines, and telecommunications companies that could not afford downtime. The concept was technically risky, and initially, no other investors would touch it. So Perkins and Kleiner backed Tandem 100% in its initial phase. They incubated Trabig and Tandem inside Kleiner Perkins offices, helping refine the technology and business model before raising additional capital. The firm invested $1.6 million starting in 1975. By 1982, that stake was worth $203.4 million. Trabig left the partnership to become Tandem's CEO, and the company went public, eventually being acquired by Compaq. This hands-on approach, incubating companies within KPCB, recruiting executives, making customer introductions, providing strategic guidance, became the firm's competitive advantage and would be replicated across dozens of future investments. Riding high on Tandem's early success, Perkins and Kleiner hired another employee, Robert Swanson, a young MBA whom Kleiner knew from venture capital circles. Swanson became obsessed with the idea that recombinant DNA technology, pioneered by Herbert Boyer at UCSF, could be commercialized to produce human proteins like insulin. In April 1976, Swanson met with Boyer, and the two decided to found a company. Kleiner Perkins invested $100,000 as the founding capital. Perkins became chairman of the board, and Genentech was born. The company would essentially create the modern biotechnology industry. Within 2 years, Genentech had achieved proof of concept for synthetic insulin. The firm's investment delivered a 200-to-1 return within just 2 years. When Genentech went public in 1980, it was one of the most successful IPOs in history. By the time Roche acquired Genentech in 2009 for $46.8 billion, it stood as one of the greatest biotech success stories ever told. By 1984, the first Kleiner Perkins Fund's 14 investments had generated a combined profit of $208 million. A staggering 95% came from just 2 companies, Tandem and Genentech. It was the power law in action, venture capital's brutal math where 1 or 2 outliers generate all the returns. But Perkins and Kleiner had proven they could identify and nurture those outliers. Success required scale. In 1978, Perkins and Kleiner reorganized the firm, adding 2 new general partners. Frank Caufield, a former U.S. Army intelligence officer who brought discipline and process to the firm's operations, joined the partnership. Brook Byers, an expert in electronics and medical technology with a degree from Georgia Tech, also came aboard. Byers would become crucial to the firm's life sciences investments and would work alongside Tom Perkins to build KPCB's biotechnology practice into one of the most successful in the industry. With the new partners came a new name: Kleiner, Perkins, Caufield and Byers, universally shortened to KPCB. They raised their second fund in 1978, $15 million. It would deliver a compound return of 99.3% over its first 5 years. In 1980, they raised their third fund, $55 million, growing at a compound rate of 62.3% in its first 3 years. By 1982, when Morgan Stanley partnered with KPCB to raise $150 million, then the largest venture capital fund ever assembled, the firm had established itself as the gold standard in Silicon Valley. Eugene Kleiner stepped down from active investing in 1982, though he remained involved with the firm. Perkins would nominally retire from the senior partner role in 1986 upon raising KPCB for $150 million, though his influence would remain enormous. As the founders stepped back, new blood joined the partnership. John Doerr joined in 1980, arriving from Intel where he had been one of the company's top salespeople. Doerr had the rare combination of technical understanding and sales ability to evangelize both to entrepreneurs and limited partners. At Intel, Doerr had learned from Andy Grove about the importance of setting measurable objectives, lessons he would later codify in his book Measure What Matters about OKRs, objectives, and key results. Vinod Khosla came aboard in 1982, fresh from co-founding Sun Microsystems. Khosla brought operational credibility and an aggressive investment style that would define the firm's approach to infrastructure and enterprise software investments through the 1980s and 1990s. His conviction-driven approach and willingness to make bold bets would lead investments in companies like Juniper Networks and Cerent, generating billions in returns before he eventually left to start his own firm in 2004. John Doerr's first major win at KPCB came with Sun Microsystems, a startup founded by Vinod Khosla, Scott McNeely, Andy Bechtolsheim, and Bill Joy. The company aimed to build high-performance workstations for engineers and scientists. Doerr led KPCB's investment in Sun's Series A. The company pioneered the concept of network computing with the motto "The network is the computer." When Sun went public in 1986, KPCB's stake was worth hundreds of millions. The firm stayed invested through multiple rounds, and Sun became a dominant force in enterprise computing through the 1990s before being acquired by Oracle in 2010. That same year, 1982, three former Texas Instruments engineers, Rod Canion, Jim Harris, and Bill Murto, had an idea. Create a portable computer that was fully compatible with IBM PCs but offered better performance and reliability. KPCB invested in Compaq's early rounds alongside Benjamin Rosen, another legendary VC. Compaq shipped its first product in 1983 and generated $111 million in revenue in its first year. At the time, this was the fastest a company had ever reached $100 million in sales. Compaq went public in 1983, less than a year after receiving venture funding. At its peak, the company was worth over $10 billion. Compaq was eventually acquired by Hewlett-Packard in 2002 for $25 billion. Also in 1982, Trip Hawkins, a former Apple employee, founded Electronic Arts with a vision. Video games were an art form, and game developers should be treated like rock stars. KPCB invested in EA's early rounds, seeing the explosive growth potential of the nascent video game industry. EA went public in 1989 and grew to become one of the largest gaming companies in the world, with franchises like FIFA, Battlefield, and The Sims generating billions in annual revenue. By 1996, Kleiner Perkins had funded around 260 companies with a total of $880 million. Their first fund, raised in 1973, achieved a 41.5% compounded annual return over its first decade. A mid-1990s fund returned $32 for every dollar invested, a performance that seemed almost mythical even by venture capital standards. But the firm's greatest victories were still ahead. In 1994, Mark Andreessen and Jim Clark founded Mosaic Communications Corporation, which would become Netscape. Their vision was to create a commercial web browser that would bring the internet to ordinary consumers. John Doerr led KPCB's investment, $5 million for a 25% stake. Netscape Navigator launched in late 1994 and quickly dominated the browser market with over 75% market share. On August 9, 1995, Netscape went public in one of the most spectacular IPOs in history. The stock was priced at $28 per share but opened at $71 and closed the first day at $58.25, valuing the 16-month-old company at nearly $3 billion. KPCB's $5 million investment was suddenly worth $400 million, an 80 times return in just over a year. Netscape did not just make KPCB rich. It catalyzed the entire dot-com boom. The IPO proved that internet companies could generate massive value quickly, attracting billions in capital to Silicon Valley. Microsoft eventually crushed Netscape through its anti-competitive bundling of Internet Explorer with Windows, and Netscape was acquired by AOL in 1999 for $4.2 billion in stock. But the investment remained iconic and demonstrated KPCB's ability to identify paradigm shifts before they became obvious. In 1996, a former Wall Street hedge fund analyst named Jeff Bezos was running an online bookstore out of his garage in Seattle. Most venture capitalists thought selling books online was a terrible idea. Why would people not just go to a bookstore? But John Doerr saw something different. Bezos had a vision that extended far beyond books. He wanted to build Earth's most customer-centric company and use books as a beachhead to eventually sell everything online. KPCB invested $8 million in Amazon's early rounds. At the time, it was one of the firm's largest investments, signaling conviction in Bezos and the e-commerce model. Amazon went public in May 1997, just 3 years after its founding, at a valuation of $438 million. KPCB's $8 million investment would eventually be worth over $1 billion as Amazon grew into the e-commerce giant we know today, with a market cap exceeding $1 trillion by 2018. Doerr's relationship with Bezos went beyond investor-entrepreneur, providing strategic guidance during Amazon's uncertain early years when the company's survival was questioned during the dot-com crash of 2001. In 1999, Andy Bechtolsheim, co-founder of Sun Microsystems and a KPCB advisor, introduced John Doerr to 2 Stanford graduate students, Larry Page and Sergey Brin. They had developed a revolutionary search algorithm called PageRank and launched it from their dorm room. The Stanford network could not handle the demand, so they had been banished off campus and needed capital and infrastructure to scale. Page and Brin brought a 17-page presentation to KPCB. Only 2 pages contained numbers, and they had added 3 cartoons just to flesh it out. They had no business model beyond a small deal with the Washington Post. As the 18th search engine to launch, they were late to the party. When Doerr asked how big Google would become, Page and Brin answered $10 billion. Doerr thought they meant market cap, but they meant annual revenue, an audacious prediction that seemed insane at the time. Despite all these red flags, Doerr and KPCB saw something extraordinary. The PageRank algorithm delivered dramatically better search results than competitors. In June 1999, KPCB and Sequoia Capital jointly invested $25 million in Google, with each firm putting in $12.5 million for a 10% stake. This was the largest investment in KPCB's history to that point. Doerr worked closely with Page and Brin to address their biggest challenges. They were skeptical about hiring a CEO, so Doerr arranged for them to meet with legendary tech founders. Scott Cook from Intuit, Bill Gates from Microsoft, Andy Grove from Intel, and Steve Jobs from Apple. Doerr then facilitated an executive search that led to Eric Schmidt, a former Sun Microsystems executive, joining as CEO in 2001. Google's IPO in August 2004 valued the company at $23 billion. KPCB's stake was worth over $2 billion at the IPO. But KPCB did not sell immediately. Over the following months and years, they distributed Google shares to their limited partners. 5.7 million shares at $172.50 in November 2004 equaling $983 million. 11.4 million shares at $203.66 in February 2005 equaling $2.3 billion. 1.1 million shares in May 2005 equaling $247 million. In total, KPCB distributed Google shares worth $3.5 for $9 billion to limited partners, with another $752 million in shares remaining undistributed. The total value exceeded $4.3 billion, a 344 times return on their $12.5 million investment. By 2019, Alphabet, Google's parent company, had a market cap of around $831 billion. KPCB's investment in Google would be talked about in the same breath as Sequoia's investment in Apple and Benchmark's investment in eBay, one of the greatest venture capital investments of all time. KPCB invested $8 million in Cerent Corporation, which built next-generation optical equipment for telecom networks. In August 1999, Cisco Systems acquired Cerent for $6.9 billion in stock. KPCB's $8 million investment was worth approximately $2 billion, a 250 times return in just 3 years. When Intuit's CEO's situation became problematic, KPCB helped recruit William Campbell, who had run Go Corporation, a failed KPCB portfolio company, to become Intuit's CEO in 1994. Campbell transformed Intuit, expanding beyond desktop software into online financial services. Under his leadership, Intuit grew from $33 million in revenue to $2 billion. KPCB's Intuit investment delivered strong returns as the company's market cap grew to over $80 billion by 2021. Founded by Pradeep Sinha to build high-performance routers for internet backbone providers, Juniper Networks received early backing from KPCB. Juniper went public in June 1999, with shares priced at $34 and closing the first day at $130.50. KPCB's investment delivered exceptional returns as Juniper's market cap briefly exceeded $30 billion during the peak of the internet bubble. In 2005, a young Mark Zuckerberg met with John Doerr and other KPCB partners to discuss investment. Facebook was just over a year old, operating only on college campuses, and had a few million users. The proposed valuation was approximately $75 to $100 million. KPCB passed. Partners were skeptical about the business model and worried that social networks were a fleeting fad. Accel Partners saw things differently and invested $12.7 million at a $98 million valuation in April 2005. That investment would grow to be worth approximately $9 billion when Facebook went public in 2012, one of the greatest venture capital investments of all time. For KPCB, missing Facebook was devastating, not just financially, but psychologically. The firm that had backed Netscape, Amazon, and Google had failed to see the next paradigm shift in consumer internet. The miss would haunt the partnership for years and became symbolic of the firm's struggles to maintain its edge in identifying the next generation of transformative companies. In the mid-2000s, John Doerr became convinced that clean energy technology would become the next massive investment opportunity. In 2006, KPCB raised a $100 million green growth fund dedicated to clean tech investments. Doerr gave TED Talks about climate change. His 2007 TED Talk has been viewed millions of times. He recruited Al Gore to join KPCB as a partner in 2007. Between 2006 and 2011, KPCB invested over $1 billion in clean tech companies across multiple funds. Fisker Automotive, an electric sports car manufacturer, received over $80 million from KPCB starting in 2007. After receiving a $529 million loan from the Department of Energy, Fisker burned through cash while struggling with battery fires and manufacturing delays. The company filed for bankruptcy in 2013, and its assets were sold for $149 million, a fraction of the capital invested. Bloom Energy, a fuel cell manufacturer, received over $100 million from KPCB starting in 2001. Bloom went public in 2018 at a valuation around $3 billion but has struggled to achieve profitability. KPCB's total returns remained negative as of 2020. Amyris, a synthetic biology company, saw heavy KPCB investment starting in 2006. Amyris went public in 2010 but struggled with production costs. The stock crashed from its IPO price. Myosol, a thin-film solar panel manufacturer, was backed by KPCB with over $100 million. Myosol was sold to Chinese company Hanergy in 2013 for an undisclosed amount, likely at a substantial loss to investors. What went wrong? Cleantech companies required enormous capital to build manufacturing facilities and scale production. Unlike software, where costs approach zero at scale, cleantech faced physical constraints and commodity economics. It took 10 to 15 years to commercialize technologies, far longer than the typical venture fund life cycle. By 2014, it was clear the clean tech experiment had failed. Industry publications ran articles with titles like The Great Clean Tech Crash and Kleiner Perkins Green Fiasco. Industry estimates suggested KPCB lost $800 million to $1 billion on clean tech investments across multiple funds. For a firm that typically raised $600 million to $1.4 billion per fund, this represented catastrophic underperformance. Doerr later admitted in interviews that clean tech was his biggest mistake. In May 2012, Ellen Pao, a junior partner at KPCB, filed a gender discrimination lawsuit against the firm. She alleged she had been passed over for promotion, excluded from meetings, subjected to inappropriate behavior from male colleagues, and ultimately fired in retaliation for complaining. The trial began in February 2015 and became a media sensation, dominating tech industry news for weeks. Courtroom testimony revealed embarrassing details. Ray Lane, a senior partner, had been accused by colleagues of inappropriate comments to women. The firm's Christmas party featured entertainment that some considered sexist. Women represented a tiny fraction of KPCB's investing partners. On March 27, 2015, the jury ruled in KPCB's favor on all counts, finding that Pao had not proven gender discrimination. But the verdict was a Pyrrhic victory. The trial damaged KPCB's reputation with female entrepreneurs, limited partners focused on diversity, and the broader public. The lawsuit became a symbol of venture capital's diversity problem, and KPCB was the poster child. The firm would spend years implementing diversity initiatives, hiring consultants, establishing programs to recruit female investors, and working to repair relationships damaged by the trial's revelations. KPCB invested heavily in Go Corporation, which aimed to create pen-based computing devices decades before the technology was ready. The firm poured over $75 million into Go across multiple rounds. Go raised over $75 million total and burned through it all. The company shut down in 1994, selling its assets to AT&T for a pittance. KPCB lost nearly its entire investment. Go's pen computing vision in 1987 was correct. Tablet computers would eventually transform personal computing. But the technology was not ready for 23 years until the iPad launched in 2010. Louis Borders had a vision. Consumers would order groceries online, and Webvan would deliver them within 30-minute windows. KPCB invested in Webvan's early rounds. Webvan raised $800 million from investors, including over $100 million from KPCB across multiple funds, and expanded aggressively to 26 cities before achieving profitability in a single market. The company filed for bankruptcy in July 2001. KPCB lost over $100 million on Webvan. KPCB invested approximately $40 million in Segway. But the product, while technologically impressive, failed to find product-market fit. The revolutionary transportation device became a punchline on late-night television. Segway was eventually acquired by a Chinese company for an undisclosed sum. KPCB's investment was largely written off. Vinod Khosla, who co-founded Sun Microsystems in 1982 before joining KPCB that same year, brought operational credibility and an aggressive investment style. He led investments in Juniper Networks, Cerent, and numerous other infrastructure companies. But Khosla chafed under KPCB's consensus-driven culture. He wanted to make bigger, bolder bets. In 2004, Khosla left to found his own firm, Khosla Ventures. Khosla's departure was a blow to KPCB's brand and raised questions about whether the firm's culture had become too bureaucratic. Khosla Ventures would go on to become one of the most successful venture firms of the 2000s and 2010s, backing companies like Square, Affirm, and DoorDash. The departure signaled that KPCB had not adequately planned for next-generation leadership, allowing talented partners to leave rather than preparing them to lead. In 2010, KPCB hired Mary Meeker, Morgan Stanley's legendary internet analyst. Her annual Internet Trends report was essential reading for anyone in tech. Meeker led investments in companies like Square, Spotify, DocuSign, and others. But her approach, making large late-stage investments rather than early-stage bets, represented a departure from KPCB's traditional model. In 2018, Mika left to start her own firm, Bond Capital, taking several KPCB colleagues with her. Her departure came as KPCB was undergoing a major restructuring, and it marked the end of the firm's growth equity ambitions. By 2017 to 2018, Kleiner Perkins faced an existential crisis. The cleantech losses had devastated returns. The Ellen Pao lawsuit had damaged the firm's reputation. They had missed Facebook and other major social media winners. Partners were leaving to start their own firms. Fund performance had deteriorated to the point where limited partners were questioning whether to continue investing. The firm that had been synonymous with Silicon Valley excellence for 4 decades was on the brink of irrelevance. Something had to change. In 2017, KPCB made a crucial hire. Mamoon Hamid, a successful partner at Sequoia Capital who had led investments in companies like Box, MongoDB, and Zuora. Hamid's arrival signaled a willingness to bring in outside leadership and fresh perspective. He did not have decades of KPCB history weighing on him. He could see clearly what needed to change. Working with partners like Ilya Fushman and Wen Hsi, Hamid led a comprehensive restructuring. The firm would return to its roots, seed and Series A investments where they could add maximum value. In 2019, the firm officially shortened its name back to Kleiner Perkins, signaling a fresh start. The partnership became leaner, with only partners who were actively investing and adding value. Recognizing that artificial intelligence represented a technological shift comparable to the internet, Kleiner Perkins made AI the centerpiece of its strategy. The restructuring addressed diversity concerns, modernized decision-making processes, and created a partnership culture that could attract and retain top talent. In 2019, Kleiner Perkins raised KP18 at $600 million, internally called the Reboot Fund. This fund would be crucial to demonstrating that the firm could still identify and back breakout companies. Early investments included companies in AI, enterprise software, and digital health. Limited partners were cautiously optimistic. The $600 million raise, while smaller than KPCB's peak funds of $1.4 billion, showed that limited partners still believed in the franchise. The restructured Kleiner Perkins began delivering results. KPCB invested in Zoom Series D in January 2017, putting money into Eric Yuan's video conferencing company at a $1 billion valuation. Zoom went public in April 2019 at a valuation of $9.2 billion. Then came COVID-19. As the pandemic forced businesses, schools, and social gatherings online, Zoom became essential infrastructure. The stock skyrocketed, briefly giving Zoom a market cap exceeding $150 billion in October 2020. KPCB's investment delivered extraordinary returns, estimated at 50 to 100 times depending on when shares were distributed. Founded by Parker Conrad after his previous company Zenefits imploded in scandal, rippling was a risky bet. But KPCB believed in Conrad's vision for an all-in-one platform managing HR, IT, and finance operations. By 2024, Rippling raised $200 million at a $13.5 billion valuation, vindicating KPCB's faith in second-time founders. KPCB invested in DoorDash's Series B when the food delivery space was crowded with competitors. DoorDash went public in December 2020 at a valuation exceeding $70 billion. KPCB invested in Slack Series C in 2014 at a $1.12 billion valuation. In December 2020, Salesforce acquired Slack for $27.7 billion. KPCB's investment delivered strong returns. KPCB invested in Figma's early rounds. When Adobe attempted to acquire Figma for $20 billion in 2022, it would have been one of KPCB's largest exits ever. The deal fell apart due to regulatory concerns, but Figma remains strong. KPCB backed grocery delivery platform Instacart in multiple rounds. The company went public in September 2023 at a valuation of approximately $10 billion. According to partners Mamoon Hamid and Ilya Fushman in a February 2024 TechCrunch interview, more than 80% of pitches the firm now receives involve AI in some capacity. By 2024, Kleiner Perkins had invested in dozens of AI companies. Glean, an enterprise AI search platform that helps employees find information across company systems, reached a $2+ billion valuation. Harvey, an AI assistant for lawyers that automates legal research and document drafting, represents the firm's bet on AI transforming professional services. Synthesia, an AI video creation platform, reached a $1 billion valuation by 2023. Together AI, an AI infrastructure company, raised $106 million in Series B in March 2024. Infinitus, an AI healthcare company automating complex phone-based workflows, demonstrates KPCB's focus on vertical AI solutions. Rippling, the workforce management platform valued at $13.5 billion in 2024, leveraged AI to unify HR, IT, and finance operations. In 2024, Kleiner Perkins successfully raised two new funds. KP21 at $825 million for early-stage investments and KP Select 3 at $1.2 billion for high-inflection growth investments, combining for over $2 billion in total. This fundraise was a watershed moment. After years of struggling performance and reputation damage, limited partners had voted with their wallets. They believed Kleiner Perkins was back. The $2+ billion raise demonstrated that the restructuring had worked, recent portfolio wins had restored confidence, and the AI-first strategy resonated with investors. As of October 2025, Kleiner Perkins' scorecard stands at impressive heights. Founded in 1972, the firm has now been in operation for 53 years. Over those decades, they have backed over 900 companies, with 806 companies currently tracked in their portfolio as of October 2025. They have created 49 unicorns, companies valued over $1 billion, and taken 98 companies public through IPOs. 300 portfolio companies have been acquired, and the firm has deployed over $10 billion in assets under management across all funds. They have raised 21 venture capital funds and 6 growth funds by 2024, with estimated job creation of 250,000 across portfolio companies and an estimated market value created of $650 billion. The New York Times called Kleiner Perkins perhaps Silicon Valley's most famous venture firm in 2005. But these accolades came from more than longevity. They came from a track record that seemed almost impossible to replicate. The investment home runs tell the story. Google's $12.5 million investment for a 10% stake grew to over $2 billion by the 2004 IPO, with total value distributed to limited partners exceeding $4.3 billion, a 344 times return. Amazon's $8 million investment returned over $1 billion. Genentech's $100,000 initial investment created a 200-to-1 return within 2 years, and when Roche acquired the company in 2009, the deal was worth $46.8 billion. Netscape's $5 million for a 25% stake returned $400 million when the company went public in 1995. Cerent's $8 million investment was worth $2 billion when sold to Cisco for $6.9 billion in August 1999. Tandem Computer's $1.6 million investment was worth $203.4 million by 1982. The historical performance numbers are equally remarkable. By 1996, Kleiner Perkins had funded around 260 companies with a total of $880 million. Their first fund, raised in 1973, achieved a 41.5% compounded annual return over its first decade. The second fund, launched in 1978 with $15 million, grew at a compound rate of 99.3% in its first 5 years. A mid-1990s fund returned $32 for every dollar invested, a performance that seemed almost mythical even by venture capital standards. The firm pioneered several industry firsts that shaped how venture capital operates today. They were the first VC firm to establish an office on Sand Hill Road, creating the geographic cluster that would define the industry. They pioneered the incubation model, funding entrepreneurs in residence who developed ideas within the firm before spinning out as companies. They invented the CEO in residence program in 1993. They created organized PR strategies for portfolio companies, breaking from the industry's traditional secrecy. These innovations became standard practice across the venture capital industry. Tom Perkins' investment philosophy became the foundation on which the firm was built. His approach was simple in concept but rigorous in execution. The Perkins Criteria asked two fundamental questions. First, was the entrepreneur solving a problem in an emerging market that would be massive? Second, did the company have a defensible technological edge that competitors could not easily replicate? If an investment passed both tests, the firm would then work to systematically eliminate all other forms of risk. Technological risk was addressed by diving deep into technical challenges, bringing in expert advisors, setting up proof-of-concept milestones, and only continuing funding if technical feasibility was demonstrated. Financial risk was managed by ensuring the capital structure was appropriate and that companies could reach key milestones before needing to raise again. KPCB became known for right-sizing initial investments. Operating risk was tackled by helping recruit key executives if the existing team could not execute. The firm pioneered the CEO in residence program in 1993 for exactly this purpose. Market risk was validated by helping facilitate pilot programs, introducing companies to potential customers through their network, and confirming demand before companies scaled up. The first lesson is that the power law dominates. One or two winners generate all returns. KPCB's first fund made 14 investments, but 95% of profits came from just two companies, Tandem Computers and Genentech. This pattern repeated across decades. Google alone returned more capital than dozens of other investments combined. When KPCB invested $12.5 million in Google for 10% ownership, many thought the valuation was excessive. But the firm held through the IPO and distributed shares worth over $4.3 billion, a 344 times return that made up for countless other investments that failed. The second lesson is that being too early is indistinguishable from being wrong. Go Corporation's Penn computing vision in 1987 was correct. Tablet computers would eventually transform personal computing. But the technology was not ready for 23 years until the iPad launched in 2010. KPCB lost over $75 million waiting for the future to arrive. Fisker Automotive burned through $80+ million from KPCB trying to build electric vehicles before Tesla had proven the market. When Fisker filed for bankruptcy in 2013, its assets sold for $149 million, a fraction of capital invested. The electric vehicle thesis was correct, but Fisker lacked Tesla's execution capability. The third lesson is that hands-on operational support differentiates top-tier VCs. Tom Perkins' systematic approach to risk elimination, incubating companies within KPCB, recruiting executives, making customer introductions, providing strategic guidance, became the firm's competitive advantage. When Tandem Computers was just an idea between James Treybig and Tom Perkins, KPCB incubated the company within their offices, helping refine the technology and business model before seeking additional capital. This hands-on approach de-risked the investment and increased probability of success. The fourth lesson is that consensus-driven cultures create stability but can miss contrarian opportunities. KPCB's requirement that all partners approve investments created thoughtful debate and reduced bad decisions. But it also meant they passed on Facebook. Some partners loved it, others were skeptical, and without unanimous consent, they could not invest. When KPCB passed on Facebook in 2005 at a $75 to $100 million valuation, it reflected their consensus process, filtering out what seemed like an expensive social networking company with no business model. Excel's $12.7 million investment turned into approximately $9 billion at Facebook's IPO, one of history's greatest VC investments that KPCB missed. The fifth lesson is that brand reputation is built over decades but can deteriorate in years. From 1972 to 2010, KPCB built unparalleled reputation through successful investments, legendary partners, and industry leadership. But the cleantech failures, Ellen Pao Lawsuit, and poor fund performance in the 2010s damaged that brand significantly. The Ellen Pao gender discrimination lawsuit, even though KPCB won in court, generated enormous negative publicity. The trial exposed cultural problems that made female entrepreneurs and investors less likely to work with the firm, requiring years of diversity initiatives and cultural change to repair relationships. The sixth lesson is that sector diversification provides stability, but focus drives excellence. KPCB's parallel practices in technology and life sciences provided diversification. When internet companies crashed in 2001, biotech investments sustained returns. But by the 2010s, the firm had expanded into too many sectors: clean tech, growth equity, China, Europe, without sufficient expertise in each. Between 2006 and 2014, KPCB invested over $1 billion in clean tech across multiple funds, stretching into sectors like solar manufacturing, biofuels, and fuel cells where they lack deep operational expertise. The estimated $800 million to $1 billion in losses demonstrated the dangers of sector sprawl without corresponding knowledge. The seventh lesson is that generational transitions require deliberate succession planning. As Tom Perkins, Eugene Kleiner, and Brook Byers stepped back, John Doerr became KPCB's face and primary decision maker. But when Doerr needed to transition leadership himself in the 2010s, there was no clear successor. Vinod Khosla's 2004 departure to start his own firm signaled that KPCB had not adequately planned for next-generation leadership, allowing talented partners to leave rather than preparing them to lead. Khosla Ventures' subsequent success showed that the talent was there, but the succession path was not clear. Tom Perkins, who lived from 1932 to 2016, was larger than life, an engineer, entrepreneur, sailor, novelist, and venture capitalist. After making his fortune at HP and university laboratories, he brought operational rigor to venture capital. He believed in systematic risk elimination, hands-on engagement with portfolio companies, and providing far more than capital. Dave Packard taught me everything I ever learned about entrepreneurship, Perkins would later say. His famous yacht, the Maltese Falcon, was one of the world's largest private sailing yachts. In his later years, Perkins courted controversy with provocative statements about wealth and class, but his contributions to venture capital and Silicon Valley were undeniable. Eugene Kleiner, who lived from 1923 to 2003, was one of the traitorous 8 who left Shockley Semiconductor to found Fairchild Semiconductor in 1957. Fairchild essentially created Silicon Valley, spinning off Intel, AMD, and dozens of other semiconductor companies. Kleiner brought technical credibility, industry connections, and a deep understanding of how to scale manufacturing operations. He stepped back from active investing in 1982 but remained involved with the firm until his death. John Doerr joined KPCB in 1980 after a successful career at Intel, where he had been one of the company's top salespeople. At Intel, Doerr learned from Andy Grove about the importance of setting measurable objectives, lessons he would later codify in his book Measure What Matters about OKRs. Doerr became KPCB's most visible and influential partner, leading investments in Sun Microsystems, Compaq, Netscape, Amazon, Google, and hundreds of other companies. His energy was legendary. He would work around the clock, travel constantly, and serve on a dozen boards simultaneously. Doerr's quote about missionary versus mercenary entrepreneurs became famous. Mercenaries are driven by paranoia, missionaries are driven by passion. Mercenaries think opportunistically, missionaries think strategically. Mercenaries go for the sprint, missionaries go for the marathon. Missionaries have a multiple of constituencies that they serve: customers, employees, shareholders. Mercenaries have only one, themselves. Brook Byers joined KPCB in 1978 and built the firm's life sciences practice. His early bet on Genentech, alongside Tom Perkins, established KPCB as a serious player in biotechnology. Over the following decades, Byers backed dozens of biotech and medical device companies, generating billions in returns. Vinod Khosla co-founded Sun Microsystems in 1982 before joining KPCB that same year. He brought operational credibility and an aggressive, conviction-driven investment style. Khosla led investments in Juniper Networks, Cerent, and numerous other infrastructure companies, generating billions in returns. In 2004, Khosla left to found his own firm, Khosla Ventures. Mamoon Hamid arrived from Sequoia Capital in 2017 and led the firm's restructuring and comeback. His willingness to bring fresh perspective and make difficult decisions helped stabilize the partnership and restore limited partner confidence. As of October 2025, Kleiner Perkins stands renewed and refocused. Current portfolio activity shows total investments in 2024 of 30 companies and total investments through October 2025 of 32 companies. The portfolio composition includes 806 companies tracked, with 665 tech companies, 522 enterprise B2B companies, 392 software companies, and 273 consumer companies. Recent fundraisers demonstrate continued limited partner confidence. In 2024, KP21 at $825 million and Select 3 at $1.2 billion combined for over $2 billion total. In 2022, KP20 for early stage and Select 2 for growth. In 2021, Select 1 Growth Fund. In 2020, KP19 at $700 million. In 2019, KP18 at $600 million, the Reboot Fund. The firm's strategic focus areas reflect lessons learned over 5 decades. Artificial intelligence and machine learning lead the way, with more than 80% of pitches now involving AI. The firm views AI as a fundamental accelerant across all sectors. Enterprise software and infrastructure continues the decades-long focus on business software. Computational biology and digital health builds on Brook Byers' legacy, applying AI and software to transform drug discovery and healthcare. Fintech and financial infrastructure targets payment systems, lending platforms, and financial tools. Future of work focuses on tools and platforms enabling remote work, collaboration, and productivity. The firm maintains its headquarters at 2750 Sand Hill Road in Menlo Park, California, with additional offices in San Francisco, California, and Shanghai, China. This geographic presence allows KPCB to remain close to both early-stage startups in San Francisco and growth-stage companies while maintaining connections to the Chinese market. Kleiner Perkins-backed companies did not just succeed. They created entire industries. Modern biotechnology began with Genentech, founded with $100,000 from KPCB in 1976, which essentially created the modern biotechnology industry. Before Genentech, nobody had successfully commercialized recombinant DNA technology. Today, biotech is a $1 trillion global industry developing treatments for cancer, genetic diseases, and countless other conditions. Consumer Internet was birthed by Netscape, which brought the Internet to mainstream consumers in 1994 to 1995. Before Netscape Navigator, the web was a tool for academics and researchers. Netscape's success proved that consumer Internet companies could generate massive value quickly, catalyzing the entire dot-com boom. E-commerce came through Amazon, backed by KPCB's $8 million investment in 1996, which proved that people would buy products online. Today, e-commerce represents over $5 trillion in annual sales globally, and Amazon alone exceeds $500 billion in annual revenue. Search and online advertising was established by Google, funded with KPCB's $12.5 million in 1999, which made search and online advertising dominant business models. The digital advertising industry now exceeds $600 billion annually, with Google capturing a significant share. Social gaming emerged from Zynga and other social gaming companies backed by KPCB that helped create the social gaming industry, which eventually evolved into today's mobile gaming market worth over $100 billion annually. Video communications became essential through Zoom, backed by KPCB in 2017, which became essential infrastructure during the COVID-19 pandemic and permanently changed how people work and communicate. Kleiner Perkins operates in an intensely competitive venture capital ecosystem. Sequoia Capital is perhaps KPCB's closest competitor, with similar longevity and track record. Andreessen Horowitz, founded in 2009, quickly rose to prominence with aggressive marketing and strong returns. Accel Partners made the Facebook investment that KPCB missed. Benchmark became known for early Uber and other consumer successes. Greylock Partners built a strong enterprise software and infrastructure track record. Khosla Ventures was founded by former KPCB partner Vinod Khosla and has achieved tremendous success. In the 2000s and early 2010s, KPCB fell behind these competitors in fund performance and deal access. The 2017 to 2025 restructuring was essential to remaining competitive. The competitive dynamics shifted dramatically during KPCB's struggling years. Sequoia's consistent outperformance while KPCB struggled with clean tech and other issues led many to view Sequoia as having surpassed KPCB as Silicon Valley's premier VC firm. However, KPCB's comeback in recent years has restored competitive balance, and the two firms continue competing for the best deals. Kleiner Perkins' current portfolio reveals what the firm believes about the future. AI infrastructure investments like Together AI are building the foundational infrastructure for artificial intelligence applications. KPCB believes that just as cloud computing, AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, became essential infrastructure in the 2010s, AI infrastructure will be critical in the 2020s and 2030s. AI-powered enterprise applications are represented by companies like Glean for enterprise search and Harvey for legal AI. These investments represent the firm's bet that AI will transform every business function, from legal work to customer service to financial analysis. Vertical AI solutions focus on applying AI to specific industries rather than horizontal AI platforms. Companies like Infinitus in healthcare and Synthesia in creative work demonstrate this sector-specific approach. The future of work is embodied by companies like Rippling, valued at $13.5 billion in 2024, representing KPCB's bet that workforce management will become increasingly unified and automated. Digital health investments in computational biology and AI-powered healthcare companies represent the intersection of two longtime KPCB focus areas, life sciences and software. These bets will determine whether the Kleiner Perkins comeback story continues or whether the firm struggles again in the next market cycle. The early excellence period from 1973 to 2000 shows remarkable performance. The first fund from 1973 achieved a 41.5% compound annual return over the first decade. The second fund from 1978 showed 99.3% compound growth in the first 5 years. A mid-1990s fund returned $32 for every $1 invested. Average fund performance consistently ranked in the top quartile, often top decile. The golden age from 1995 to 2005 delivered legendary returns. Google achieved a 344 times return, turning $12.5 million into $4.3 billion plus. Amazon's $8 million grew to $1 billion plus. Cerent delivered $8 million to $2 billion, a 250 times return in 3 years. Netscape returned $5 million to $400 million, an 80 times return in approximately 1 year. Dozens of other successful exits filled out the portfolio. The struggling years from 2006 to 2018 showed the firm's vulnerability. Cleantech losses totaled an estimated $800 million to $1 billion across multiple funds. The Facebook miss meant passing on $12.7 million that would have become $9 billion. Fund performance fell below median for several funds. Partner departures included Khosla in 2004, Mika in 2018, and others. The comeback from 2018 to 2025 demonstrated resilience. Zoom delivered an estimated 50 to 100 times return. Rippling reached a $13.5 billion valuation in 2024. DoorDash achieved a $70 billion plus valuation at IPO. Figma saw an attempted $20 billion acquisition that fell through. The 2024 fundraise brought in $2 billion plus across 2 funds. From the beginning, Kleiner Perkins' physical location mattered enormously. The address 2750 Sand Hill Road in Menlo Park, California, became the most famous address in venture capital. By establishing the first VC office on Sand Hill Road, KPCB created the geographic cluster that defines the industry today. Within a few miles of KPCB's headquarters sit Sequoia Capital, Accel Partners, Greylock Partners, Andreessen Horowitz, Benchmark, and dozens of other leading VC firms. This clustering creates serendipitous meetings, deal flow, and network effects that benefit the entire ecosystem. Entrepreneurs pitch multiple firms in a single day. Partners run into each other at coffee shops and restaurants. Information flows quickly. KPCB also opened additional offices in San Francisco to be closer to consumer internet companies and in Shanghai, China to invest in the Chinese market. They briefly had a London office from 2000 but closed it after the dot-com bust. But the Menlo Park headquarters remained the spiritual and operational center of the firm. Limited partners, the endowments, foundations, pension funds, and family offices that provide capital to venture funds, have had a complicated relationship with Kleiner Perkins over 5 decades. During the golden years from the 1970s to 2000s, limited partners fought to get allocations in KPCB funds. The firm's funds were consistently oversubscribed, allowing them to be selective about which limited partners they accepted. Access to KPCB was a badge of honor for institutional investors. Yale University's endowment, Harvard Management Company, Stanford University, and other top institutional investors maintained long-term relationships with KPCB, staying committed through multiple fund cycles. The crisis years from 2006 to 2018 brought frustration as clean tech investments failed and fund performance deteriorated. Some limited partners declined to invest in subsequent funds. Others reduced their commitments. The relationship strain was significant. Private letters from limited partners to KPCB's management reportedly expressed concern about overexpansion into sectors where KPCB lacked expertise, insufficient focus on core competencies, cultural issues highlighted by the Ellen Pao lawsuit, partner departures creating instability, and growth equity strategy that deviated from early-stage focus. The comeback years from 2018 to 2025 showed renewed limited partner confidence. The successful 2024 fundraise of $2 billion plus across KP21 and Select 3 demonstrated this revival. Limited partners who had stuck with KPCB through the difficult years were rewarded with early access to companies like Zoom, Rippling, and other winners. The limited partner community's willingness to commit significant capital in 2024 validated the restructuring strategy and signaled belief that Kleiner Perkins had truly turned the corner. Throughout its history, certain cultural elements have defined Kleiner Perkins. Operational engagement stemmed from Tom Perkins' original vision. KPCB partners were never passive investors. They rolled up their sleeves, helped recruit executives, opened doors to customers, and provided strategic guidance. Consensus decision-making required all partners to approve investments for decades. This created healthy debate but also occasional gridlock and missed opportunities like Facebook. Long-term orientation was demonstrated by the firm's willingness to hold Google shares through and after the IPO, distributing them over multiple tranches, showing patience that maximized returns for limited partners. Technical credibility remained essential with founders like Perkins, an engineer at HP, and Kleiner, a Fairchild Semiconductor co-founder. Partners needed to understand the technology, not just the business model. Sector expertise meant partners developed deep expertise in specific sectors rather than being generalists. Bias in life sciences, Doerr in internet and enterprise software, and others in their specialties. Network effects created the KPCB Keiretsu of portfolio companies sharing best practices and supporting each other, generating value beyond individual investments. Public thought leadership set KPCB apart from many VC firms that operated in secrecy. John Doerr's TED Talks, Mary Meeker's Internet Trends Reports, and Randy Komisar's books helped shape industry thinking. The Ellen Pao lawsuit in 2012 to 2015 forced Kleiner Perkins to confront uncomfortable truths about diversity and inclusion. The trial revealed that women represented a tiny fraction of KPCB's investing partners, cultural practices sometimes excluded women from important conversations, allegations of inappropriate behavior by senior partners existed, and structural barriers to advancement for female employees were present. While KPCB won the lawsuit in court, the reputational damage was severe. The trial became a symbol of venture capital's broader diversity problem. Steps taken post-lawsuit included hiring diversity consultants to assess culture, establishing programs to recruit female investors, starting to track portfolio company diversity metrics, making public commitments to improving gender representation, and implementing updated HR policies and training. By 2025, Kleiner Perkins had made progress on diversity, but like the broader venture capital industry, significant work remained. What was it like to be a Kleiner Perkins portfolio company? The onboarding process began when KPCB invested and a partner would typically join the board of directors. That partner would schedule regular meetings, often weekly in early stages, to review progress, discuss challenges, and provide guidance. The value add included recruiting support with introductions to executive candidates, engineers, and board members through KPCB's network. Customer introductions provided warm connections to potential enterprise customers, particularly valuable for B2B companies. Strategic guidance came through regular office hours with partners to discuss pricing, go-to-market strategy, fundraising, and M&A. PR and positioning helped with media coverage and company positioning, particularly valuable for consumer companies. Follow-on capital was available as KPCB maintained reserves for follow-on investments in breakout companies. M&A facilitation provided introductions to potential acquirers and advice on exit timing. IPO preparation connected companies to investment banks and provided guidance on going public. The expectations were clear. Transparent communication about challenges, not just successes. Execution against agreed-upon milestones and OKRs. Willingness to make tough decisions quickly, including pivots, layoffs, and executive changes. Building for the long term, not settling for modest outcomes. Creating massive value rather than accepting incremental gains. Companies like Google, Amazon, and Intuit credit KPCB's operational support as crucial to their success. Eric Schmidt specifically mentioned John Doerr's guidance as instrumental to Google's growth. Beyond clean tech, KPCB tried several strategies that did not work. The London office opened in 2000 at the peak of the dot-com boom to invest in European startups. When the bubble burst in 2000 to 2001, the European portfolio struggled. The office closed, and KPCB refocused on the US market. The iFund launched in 2008 as a $100 million fund to invest specifically in iPhone applications. While some investments succeeded, mobile app companies often lacked the scale and defensibility that KPCB was accustomed to. The specialized fund delivered modest returns compared to broader technology funds. Growth equity expansion from 2010 to 2018, led by Mary Meeker, saw KPCB raise multiple growth equity funds to make later-stage investments. While some investments like Square and Spotify succeeded, the growth strategy required different skills than early-stage investing. When Meeker left in 2018 to start Bond Capital, KPCB wound down the growth equity practice. China Investment saw KPCB maintain an office in Shanghai and make investments in Chinese companies. However, competing in China against local firms like Sequoia China proved challenging. The firm's China portfolio delivered mixed results. Each failed experiment taught lessons that informed the 2017 to 2018 restructuring. The takeaway: stick to core competencies, early-stage technology investing in the United States, rather than expanding into unfamiliar territories. As of October 2025, Kleiner Perkins' current portfolio includes the next generation of potential breakout companies. In enterprise AI, Glean leads enterprise AI search with a $2 billion plus valuation. Harvey provides AI for legal professionals. Infinitus delivers healthcare AI automating phone workflows. In infrastructure, Together AI builds AI infrastructure and raised $106 million in Series B in March 2024. Rippling manages workforces and reached a $13.5 billion valuation in 2024. In consumer and media, Synthesia generates AI videos and achieved a $1 billion valuation in 2023, along with various other consumer applications leveraging AI. Digital health includes multiple computational biology companies, AI-powered diagnostic companies, and healthcare workflow automation systems. Fintech investments cover next-generation payment companies, embedded finance platforms, and lending infrastructure. Will any of these become the next Google or Amazon? Time will tell. But KPCB's recent track record suggests they have regained the ability to identify potential winners early. Over 5 decades, certain quotes have captured Kleiner Perkins' philosophy. Tom Perkins said, "Dave Packard taught me everything I ever learned about entrepreneurship." On his investment criteria, he stated, "We look for insight into an emerging new market and competitive advantage through technology. Then we systematically try to eliminate risk." John Doerr articulated his famous distinction. Mercenaries are driven by paranoia, missionaries are driven by passion. Mercenaries think opportunistically, missionaries think strategically. Mercenaries go for the sprint, missionaries go for the marathon. On Google's potential, when Larry Page and Sergey Brin predicted $10 billion in annual revenue, Doerr thought they meant market cap. They meant revenue, an audacious prediction that seemed insane at the time but proved conservative. On failure, Doerr later admitted clean tech was his biggest mistake, saying, "We believed the thesis about climate change and renewable energy was correct. It was. But venture capital was the wrong vehicle to fund the transformation." Mamoon Hamid, speaking about the comeback in a 2024 interview, said, "Our focus is back on what made Kleiner Perkins legendary, backing exceptional founders at the earliest stages with breakthrough technologies that can create entirely new markets." How do competing firms view Kleiner Perkins? Sequoia Capital and KPCB have been rivals and occasional partners. They co-invested in Google for decades. Sequoia's consistent outperformance through the 2000s and 2010s, while KPCB struggled with clean tech and other issues, shifted competitive dynamics. Many viewed Sequoia as having surpassed KPCB as Silicon Valley's premier VC firm. However, KPCB's comeback in recent years has restored competitive balance. The two firms continue competing for the best deals. Andreessen Horowitz, founded in 2009 by Mark Andreessen, Netscape's founder, and Ben Horowitz, quickly rose to prominence with aggressive marketing, large funds, and strong returns. During KPCB's struggling years in the 2010s, many thought a 16Z had replaced KPCB as the hot firm entrepreneurs wanted to work with. The generational contrast was stark. A 16Z represented the new generation of media-savvy, brand-focused venture capital, while KPCB seemed like the old guard. Accel Partners made the Facebook investment, the deal KPCB passed on, which became legendary. That single investment generated returns that exceeded most venture funds' entire portfolios. It demonstrated that missing one deal could define a decade. Benchmark, known for early Uber, Twitter, and other consumer companies, represents a different model than KPCB. Smaller funds, equal partnerships, and focus on consumer marketplace companies. Their consistent performance through cycles that challenged KPCB reinforced the value of focus and discipline. Despite clean tech losses and struggling performance in the 2010s, several limited partners maintained their relationships with Kleiner Perkins. Stanford University, as the university closest to KPCB geographically and philosophically, maintained allocations through difficult periods. This loyalty reflected long-term relationships dating back to the 1970s and confidence in eventual recovery. Yale University's endowment, legendary for venture capital returns under David Swenson's leadership, continued investing with KPCB even as some other limited partners dropped out. This staying power would be rewarded when recent funds delivered strong returns. Select family offices associated with successful entrepreneurs maintained KPCB allocations, viewing temporary underperformance as inevitable in venture capital's cyclical business. These loyal limited partners enabled KPCB to survive its crisis years. Without their continued support, the firm might have spiraled downward irreversibly. Ironically, some of Kleiner Perkins' greatest competition came from former portfolio CEOs and partners who started their own firms. Vinod Khosla left to found Khosla Ventures in 2004. After leaving KPCB, Khosla founded his own firm and achieved tremendous success, backing companies like Square, Affirm, DoorDash, and many others. Khosla Ventures' success demonstrated that KPCB's talent was world-class, even if the firm's consensus culture sometimes constrained individual partners. Mark Andreessen, the entrepreneur KPCB backed in Netscape, went on to co-found Andreessen Horowitz in 2009, one of venture capital's most successful new firms. A 16Zs rise coincided with KPCB's struggles in the 2010s, creating uncomfortable comparisons. Mary Meeker left to start Bond Capital in 2018, and her departure, taking several KPCB colleagues with her, was painful. But it also reflected the natural cycle of venture capital, where successful investors eventually want to build their own franchises. This pattern, portfolio entrepreneurs and partners spinning out to compete, is common in venture capital. In some ways, it validates KPCB's judgment. They backed people capable of building great firms, even if those firms eventually competed for deals. Where did Kleiner Perkins capital come from? Institutional investors included university endowments like Stanford, Yale, and Harvard. Foundation endowments from charitable foundations seeking long-term returns. Pension funds, both public and corporate, allocated to alternative assets. Sovereign wealth funds from government investment vehicles from various countries. Private investors comprised family offices from wealthy families managing their own capital. Funds of funds are specialized investment vehicles that allocate to multiple VC firms. Successful entrepreneurs who made fortunes and reinvested in VC. The limited partner base evolved over 5 decades. Early funds in the 1970s drew from Rockefeller University and a small number of institutional investors experimenting with venture capital. By the 1990s, KPCB had access to the world's top institutional investors. During the 2010 struggles, some limited partners departed, but the 2024 fundraise of $2 billion plus demonstrated that KPCB had rebuilt credibility. Kleiner Perkins' 53-year history spans multiple complete technology cycles. Cycle 1 covered semiconductors and computing hardware from the 1970s to 1980s. When KPCB started in 1972, semiconductors and computing hardware dominated Silicon Valley. Investments like Tandem Computers, Sun Microsystems, and Compaq captured this era's value creation. The key insight was that hardware required significant capital but could generate enormous returns if companies achieved scale and market dominance. Cycle 2 encompassed personal computing and software from the 1980s to 1990s. As PCs proliferated, software became valuable. Investments in Lotus Development, Intuit, Electronic Arts, and others captured the shift from hardware to software economics. The key insight was that software had better gross margins and capital efficiency than hardware but required different go-to-market strategies. Cycle 3 involved Internet infrastructure in the 1990s. The emergence of the Internet required new infrastructure. Investments in Netscape, Juniper Networks, Cerent, Verizon, and AOL built the backbone of the digital age. The key insight was that infrastructure companies could generate massive returns during technological transitions, even if they eventually faced commoditization pressure. Cycle 4 covered e-commerce and consumer internet from 1995 to 2000. Amazon, eToys, Drugstore.com, Webvan, and others represented bets that commerce would move online. Some succeeded spectacularly like Amazon, while others failed catastrophically like Webvan and eToys. The key insight was that business model viability mattered more than technology. Consumer behavior change took longer than optimistic projections suggested. Cycle 5 featured search and social media from 2000 to 2010. Google dominated search, while Facebook, Twitter, and Zynga captured social networking's rise. KPCB hit a grand slam with Google but missed Facebook, a miss that would haunt them for years. The key insight was that network effects and platform dynamics created winner-take-all markets where being second meant being irrelevant. Cycle 6 brought mobile and cloud from 2010 to 2020. The iPhone launched in 2007, and cloud computing matured through the 2010s. KPCB's mobile investments delivered mixed results, but cloud SaaS companies like Slack succeeded. The key insight was that mobile app economics often disappointed, but enterprise SaaS companies built on cloud infrastructure could achieve impressive scale and retention. Cycle 7 represents AI and machine learning from 2020 to the present. By the early 2020s, artificial intelligence had matured sufficiently for practical applications. KPCB's current portfolio reflects heavy emphasis on AI infrastructure and applications. The key insight is that AI represents a fundamental technology shift comparable to the internet or mobile, potentially even larger. Firms that successfully ride multiple technology cycles demonstrate pattern recognition and adaptability. KPCB's ability to pivot from semiconductors to biotechnology to internet to AI across 5 decades is remarkable. How much of Kleiner Perkins' success came from skill versus luck? Arguments for skill include consistent identification of exceptional founders like Bezos, Page, Brin, and Swanson. Operational support that increased success probability. Pattern recognition across multiple technology cycles. Ability to recover from major setbacks including cleantech and the Pao lawsuit. Sophisticated risk management and portfolio construction. Arguments for luck include being in the right place, Silicon Valley, at the right time, the dawn of venture capital. Having Eugene Kleiner's network from Fairchild Semiconductor. Timing the Netscape IPO perfectly near peak of .com enthusiasm. Holding Google through IPO when they could have sold earlier. The Zoom investment just before the COVID-19 pandemic. The truth, as with all venture capital, lies somewhere between. Andy Bechtolsheim introducing Doerr to Page and Brin was luck, but Doerr's ability to recognize Google's potential and provide value was skill. Tom Perkins himself acknowledged luck's role, saying, "Success in venture capital requires being smart, working hard, and being lucky. But you increase your luck by being smart and working hard." Every venture firm has regrets, great companies they could have backed but did not. For Kleiner Perkins, several missed opportunities stand out. Facebook in 2005 represents the $12.7 million investment that became $9 billion and haunts KPCB to this day. Tesla from 2004 to 2009 saw KPCB invest heavily in Fisker Automotive, which failed, while they passed on Tesla. Elon Musk raised venture capital from Draper Fisher Jurvetson, Vantage Point, and others. Tesla's eventual market cap would exceed $800 billion at its peak. Airbnb in 2009 went to Sequoia, which backed Airbnb's early rounds while KPCB passed. Airbnb would go public in 2020 at a valuation exceeding $100 billion. WhatsApp in 2011 saw Sequoia invest $60 million across several rounds. Facebook acquired WhatsApp for $19 billion in 2014. KPCB was reportedly interested but did not win the deal. Stripe in 2011 was missed. While KPCB has investments in fintech, they missed Stripe's early rounds. The payment processing company reached a valuation of $95 billion in 2021. In venture capital, the deals you miss often define your decade as much as the deals you make. KPCB's 2000s would have looked dramatically different if they had backed Facebook instead of cleantech companies. Inside venture capital firms, partners write investment memos arguing for or against deals. While KPCB's internal memos remain confidential, certain decisions reveal the arguments that were made. The Google memo in 1999 must have seen John Doerr argue that the PageRank algorithm delivered dramatically better search results. Founders were technical geniuses who were PhD students from Stanford. Internet search was becoming critical infrastructure, and even if search did not monetize directly, Google could become a portal or get acquired. Skeptics would have noted that as the 18th search engine to market, they were very late. There was no business model beyond a small Washington Post deal. Founders were young and inexperienced. Search might be a commodity feature, not a standalone business. Doerr's memo must have been persuasive enough to justify KPCB's largest investment to date, $12.5 million. That memo, if it could be read today, would be a masterclass in conviction-driven venture capital. The Cleantech memo in 2006 would have seen Doerr argue that global warming was accelerating and the world needed solutions. Oil prices were rising, making alternatives economically viable. Government subsidies and mandates would support industry growth. KPCB could do for Cleantech what it did for biotech and internet. The counter-arguments, which apparently were not strong enough, warned that capital intensity would strain venture fund economics. Commodity markets had razor-thin margins. Technology development timelines exceeded fund life cycles. Policy risk made business models dependent on government support. Chinese manufacturing advantages would be hard to overcome. The Cleantech memo's optimism, and the partnership's willingness to bet over $1 billion on the thesis, would prove costly. The Facebook pass in 2005 saw the memo arguing against Facebook note that valuation seemed high at $75 to $100 million for a company with no revenue. Social networks had a poor track record, with Friendster having crashed. College students might not be a valuable advertising demographic. MySpace already dominated social networking. There was no clear path to monetization. These arguments seemed reasonable in 2005. In hindsight, they were catastrophically wrong. But investment memos can only be judged with information available at the time. Beyond financial returns, Kleiner Perkins-backed companies created cultural moments that defined eras. Netscape Navigator in 1995 brought the blue N logo that became synonymous with the internet for millions of people. What's your URL entered common vocabulary? The Netscape IPO proved internet companies could be worth billions, catalyzing an entire boom. Amazon Prime in 2005, while KPCB's initial investment came in 1996, saw Amazon's continued growth create Prime, a service that fundamentally changed consumer expectations for shipping and delivery. Google search in the 2000s made just Google it enter the dictionary as a verb. Google Doodles became cultural events. Gmail, Google Maps, and other products shaped how billions of people access information. Twitter hashtags and mentions from 2009 onward saw KPCB-backed Twitter create new forms of communication. Hashtags organized conversations while mentions enabled direct engagement. Twitter became the platform where news broke and movements organized. Zoom during COVID-19 in 2020 made you're on mute the phrase of the pandemic. Zoom became a verb, let's Zoom. Virtual backgrounds, gallery view, and Zoom fatigue entered common experience. KPCB-backed Zoom became essential infrastructure during humanity's largest remote work experiment. EA Sports games from the 1990s to present shaped how generations experienced sports through Madden, NFL, FIFA, and other EA franchises. EA Sports, it's in the game became one of entertainment's most recognized taglines. These cultural moments demonstrate that KPCB did not just invest in companies. They invested in forces that shaped how people lived, worked, and communicated. Kleiner Perkins partners sat on boards where crucial decisions shaped technology history. The Google board from 1999 to the 2010s saw John Doerr sit alongside Michael Moritz from Sequoia, Eric Schmidt, Larry Page, and Sergey Brin. Decisions made in that boardroom included hiring Eric Schmidt as CEO, launching AdWords as the business model that made Google, acquiring YouTube for $1.65 billion in 2006, expanding into mobile with Android, and going public via unusual Dutch auction IPO. The Amazon board from 1996 to the 2000s had Doerr serving during crucial early years when decisions were made to expand beyond books into electronics, toys, and other categories, build fulfillment infrastructure for rapid delivery, survive the dot-com crash when Amazon stock traded below $6, and launch Amazon Web Services, which would become a massive business. The Intuit board from 1994 to the 2000s, after KPCB helped recruit Bill Campbell as CEO, made decisions to defeat Microsoft Money in the personal finance software wars, acquire TurboTax and dominate tax preparation, transition from desktop software to cloud-based services, and grow from $33 million to $2 billion in revenue. The Genentech board from 1976 to 2009 had Tom Perkins serving as chairman, making decisions to prove recombinant DNA technology could be commercialized, create the modern biotechnology industry, go public in one of history's most successful biotech IPOs, and build to $46.8 billion acquisition by Roche in 2009. These board seats gave KPCB partners front row seats to, and influence over, decisions that shaped entire industries. Over 5 decades, dozens of people worked at Kleiner Perkins. Many went on to significant careers elsewhere. Partners who left to start firms included Vinod Khosla founding Khosla Ventures, Mary Meeker founding Bond Capital, Ellen Pao founding Project Include for Diversity Advocacy, and Matt Murphy later joining Menlo Ventures. Associates and analysts became VCs, with multiple junior team members moving to other top-tier firms. Portfolio CEOs became angels and VCs. Bill Campbell from Intuit became an executive coach and angel investor. Jeff Bezos from Amazon pursued personal ventures and Blue Origin. Eric Schmidt from Google moved into philanthropic ventures and advisory roles. Entrepreneurs in residence who founded companies included Robert Swanson founding Genentech, James Trabig founding Tandem Computers, and multiple others incubated within KPCB before spinning out. This alumni network extended KPCB's influence beyond direct portfolio companies. Campbell, in particular, became Silicon Valley's most legendary executive coach, advising Steve Jobs, Larry Page, and dozens of other CEOs, maintaining connections to KPCB throughout his career. Certain relationships defined Kleiner Perkins' trajectory. Tom Perkins and Eugene Kleiner formed the founding partnership that combined Perkins' operational expertise with Kleiner's semiconductor industry credibility. Their complementary skills created the foundation for everything that followed. John Doerr and Larry Page with Sergey Brin developed a relationship that went beyond investor-entrepreneur. Doerr helped them navigate crucial decisions about hiring, business model, and growth strategy. The mutual respect and trust enabled KPCB to maximize returns from their greatest investment. John Doerr and Jeff Bezos built a similar relationship, with Doerr's guidance during Amazon's uncertain early years. When Amazon's survival was questioned in 2001, KPCB's continued support mattered. Brook Byers and Robert Swanson established KPCB's life sciences practice through their relationship. Byers' work with Genentech founder Robert Swanson proved that biotech could generate venture capital-style returns. Mamoon Hamid and the new generation formed relationships that enabled honest assessment of what was not working after Hamid's arrival in 2017 from Sequoia. His relationships with entrepreneurs and other VCs helped KPCB rebuild deal flow and reputation. In venture capital, relationships often matter as much as capital. KPCB's ability to build and maintain relationships across generations of entrepreneurs distinguished them from purely transactional investors. What economic value did Kleiner Perkins create? Direct market value came from portfolio companies that created an estimated $650 billion by 2025. This includes Google Alphabet with peak market cap over $2 trillion, Amazon with peak market cap over $1.8 trillion, hundreds of other public companies, and hundreds of acquired companies. Job creation reached an estimated 250,000 jobs across portfolio companies. Google employs over 180,000 people, Amazon employs over 1.5 million, and hundreds of thousands work at other portfolio companies. Tax revenue from portfolio companies has generated billions, including corporate taxes, payroll taxes from hundreds of thousands of employees, capital gains taxes from successful exits, and sales taxes from e-commerce and other transactions. Innovation spillovers came from technologies developed at KPCB portfolio companies. The PageRank algorithm from Google influenced how information is organized. Recombinant DNA commercialization from Genentech enabled the modern biotech industry. E-commerce infrastructure from Amazon became foundation that other companies built upon. Browser technology from Netscape made the internet accessible to millions. Secondary effects extended far beyond KPCB's direct investments. Portfolio company employees left to start their own companies. Technologies enabled entirely new industries. Best practices spread throughout Silicon Valley. Capital distributed to limited partners was reinvested in other ventures. The economic impact extends far beyond KPCB's $10+ billion in committed capital. The firm's investment decisions helped allocate capital to transformative technologies that reshaped the global economy. Certain philosophical principles guided Kleiner Perkins across decades. The missionary, not mercenary principle emphasized by John Doerr's famous distinction backed founders driven by mission and passion rather than purely financial motivation. Page and Brin wanted to organize the world's information. Bezos wanted to build Earth's most customer-centric company. This mission orientation correlated with persistence through challenges. The 10x, not 10% principle meant KPCB sought companies that could create entirely new markets and grow 10 times with 1,000% returns, not companies that would improve existing markets by 10%. This philosophy explained their willingness to back unproven technologies in emerging categories. Systematic risk elimination embodied Tom Perkins' core principle. Identify breakthrough opportunities, then methodically eliminate technological, financial, operational, and market risks. This disciplined approach distinguished KPCB from VCs who simply bet on charismatic founders without systematic de-risking. Patient capital demonstrated KPCB's willingness to hold winners like Google through and after IPOs, rather than selling immediately, which maximized returns. This required educating limited partners about long-term value creation versus short-term liquidity. Operational value add reflected the firm's belief that capital was commodity. Everyone could write checks. Competitive advantage came from operational support including recruiting, customer introductions, and strategic guidance. This philosophy justified hands-on engagement that consumed significant partner time. Beyond cleantech and the Pao lawsuit, KPCB survived multiple existential challenges. The dot-com crash from 2000 to 2002 saw many KPCB portfolio companies collapse when the internet bubble burst. eToys filed for bankruptcy, drugstore.com struggled, Webvan imploded, and dozens of other internet companies failed. But Google, Amazon, and other survivors carried funds through the crisis. The crash tested KPCB's judgment about which internet companies had genuine business models versus hype. The 2008 financial crisis threatened venture-backed companies' access to capital and customers as the global financial crisis unfolded. But KPCB's portfolio, including companies like Twitter and Zynga, largely weathered the storm. The crisis actually helped some portfolio companies by reducing competition and customer acquisition costs. The 2015 to 2016 downturn brought a pullback in venture valuations and funding that hit growth stage companies hard. KPCB's large funds raised in 2014 to 2016 faced challenging deployment environments. But companies like Zoom, backed during this period, would prove excellent investments. The COVID-19 pandemic in 2020 could have devastated portfolio companies. Instead, companies like Zoom, DoorDash, and Peloton thrived as behavior shifted to remote work, food delivery, and home fitness. KPCB's ability to support portfolio companies through rapid growth challenges mattered as much as surviving downturns. Each crisis taught lessons about business model resilience, capital efficiency, and the importance of mission-driven founders who persisted through challenges. Where is Kleiner Perkins headed? Strategic priorities include AI across all sectors with continued heavy investment in artificial intelligence infrastructure and applications. Early-stage focus maintains discipline around seed and Series A investments where KPCB can add maximum value. Computational biology leveraged AI and software to transform drug discovery and healthcare. Enterprise software continues backing next-generation business tools and infrastructure. Climate, labeled as Attempt 2, cautiously re-enters climate tech, applying lessons from clean tech failures. Cultural evolution seeks to balance consensus decision-making with individual partner conviction, maintain diversity initiatives and inclusive culture, attract the next generation of investment talent, and preserve institutional knowledge while embracing innovation. Competitive positioning aims to compete head-to-head with Sequoia, Andreessen Horowitz, and other top-tier firms, leverage the 53-year track record and brand to win deals, provide operational value that justifies founder preference, and maintain limited partner relationships built over decades. fund strategy plans to continue raising $600 to $900 million early-stage funds like KP21 at $825 million, opportunistically raise growth funds like Select 3 at $1.2 billion for high-conviction later-stage investments, and target total fundraising of $1.5 to $2 billion per cycle. The vision for 2025 to 2030 represents continuity with the past through early-stage focus, operational engagement, and technology emphasis while embracing new technologies like AI and applying hard-won lessons to avoid capital-intensive commodity businesses like clean tech. As Kleiner Perkins enters its sixth decade, certain questions remain unanswered. Will AI investments deliver Google-level returns? The firm has invested heavily in AI infrastructure and applications. Will companies like Glean, Harvey, Together AI, and others generate billion-dollar returns? Or will AI follow Genentech's path, correct thesis, wrong vehicle? Can KPCB maintain top-tier status long-term? The 2017 to 2025 comeback restored competitiveness. But can the firm sustain performance across multiple fund cycles? Or was the recent success temporary? What happens when John Doerr fully retires? Doerr, now in his early 70s, remains involved but has transitioned operational leadership. When he fully retires, will KPCB's brand and relationships remain strong? Or was the firm too dependent on his personal reputation? Will the next technology wave favor KPCB? Each technology cycle favors different firms. Internet favored KPCB. Social media favored Excel with Facebook. Mobile and marketplace favored Benchmark with Uber. Will AI favor Kleiner Perkins? Or other firms? Can they avoid another clean tech scale mistake? KPCB's $800 million to $1 billion clean tech losses nearly destroyed the firm. Have they learned sufficient lessons to avoid similar mistakes? Or might they overinvest in the next exciting but flawed sector? Time will answer these questions. By 2030 to 2035, it will be clear whether Kleiner Perkins' comeback was sustainable or temporary. On a sunny morning in October 2025, at 2750 Sand Hill Road in Menlo Park, California, partners at Kleiner Perkins gather for a Monday partnership meeting. The office where Tom Perkins and Eugene Kleiner first set up shop in 1972 has been renovated multiple times, but the address remains unchanged. The partnership has changed too. New faces around the table represent a generation that never knew Perkins or Kleiner personally. But they know the stories. They know about Genentech's $100,000 founding investment. They know about Google's 344 times return. They know about Genentech's catastrophic failures. The meeting focuses on an AI infrastructure company seeking series of funding. The pitch is compelling. Breakthrough technology that could reduce AI training costs by 90%. The founders are technical luminaries from leading universities. The market opportunity seems massive. But the partners probe deeply. Can the technology actually be built at scale? Is the capital structure right-sized for key milestones? Does this team have operational excellence to execute? Will customers actually buy this, or is it a solution seeking a problem? It is Tom Perkins' investment philosophy, refined over 5 decades, still guiding decisions in 2025. In 1972, Tom Perkins and Eugene Kleiner raised $8 million to back technology companies in emerging markets with breakthrough technologies. They systematically eliminated risk and provided hands-on operational support. In 2024, Mamoon Hamid and Ilya Fushman raised $2 billion across 2 funds to back technology companies in emerging markets with breakthrough technologies. They systematically eliminate risk and provide hands-on operational support. The playbook has not fundamentally changed in 53 years. Capital. Judgment. Operational support. Pattern recognition. Risk management. These timeless principles have guided venture capital since Kleiner Perkins invented the modern model. What has changed is the scale. $8 million to $10+ billion in assets. 1 office to 3. 2 partners to a dozen. 18 investments in the first fund to 800-plus portfolio companies across all funds. By October 2025, the firm has been in operation for 53 years with 27 total funds comprising 21 venture and 6 growth funds. They have backed over 900 companies with 806 companies in their tracked portfolio. They have created 49 unicorns valued over $1 billion and achieved 98 IPOs with 300 acquisitions completed. They have created 250,000-plus jobs across their portfolio and generated an estimated $650 billion in market value with over $10 billion in assets under management. These numbers represent more than financial success. They represent industries created including biotechnology, consumer internet, e-commerce, and search. Lives changed through treatments for diseases, access to information, and economic opportunity. Technologies that shape modern existence through Google search, Amazon delivery, and Zoom calls. But ultimately, Kleiner Perkins is a human story. It is Tom Perkins, the HP engineer who wanted to build companies, not just products. It is Eugene Kleiner, one of the traitorous 8 who walked out on Shockley and created Silicon Valley. It is Robert Swanson, the young MBA who convinced a scientist that recombinant DNA could be commercialized. It is Larry Page and Sergey Brin, 2 graduate students with a better search algorithm and audacious dreams. It is Jeff Bezos, selling books from his garage with a vision to build Earth's most customer-centric company. It is John Doerr, tirelessly evangelizing the potential of internet companies when most people could not imagine shopping online. It is the hundreds of entrepreneurs who received capital, guidance, and support from KPCB partners over 5 decades. It is the limited partners who provided capital and stayed committed through cycles of boom and bust. It is Mamoon Hamid and the partners who rebuilt the firm after it nearly collapsed under the weight of clean tech failures and cultural crises. Was Kleiner Perkins' journey worth it? From a financial perspective, yes. The firm generated tens of billions in returns for limited partners. The founding partners and subsequent generations of partners earned hundreds of millions in carried interest. From a societal perspective, yes. Portfolio companies created technologies that improved billions of lives. Search engines organized information. E-commerce made products accessible. Biotechnology developed disease treatments. Video conferencing enabled connection during a pandemic. From a human perspective? That is more complicated. The journey included brilliant successes and catastrophic failures. Visionary investments and costly mistakes. Cultural moments and reputation crises. Legendary returns and devastating losses. Venture capital, like the entrepreneurship it funds, is a story of ambition, risk, failure, learning, and persistence. Kleiner Perkins embodied all of it. In venture capital, there is no final word. The story continues. As of October 2025, Kleiner Perkins has $2+ billion in fresh capital to deploy. Partners are evaluating AI companies, enterprise software startups, digital health innovators, and entrepreneurs with breakthrough technologies in emerging markets. Some investments will fail spectacularly. Others will generate modest returns. A handful, if history is any guide, will create entirely new industries and return billions. Which companies will be the Google and Amazon of this decade? Which will be the clean tech and Webvan disasters? Nobody knows. That uncertainty, that possibility that the next meeting could change everything, is what drives venture capital. It is why Tom Perkins left HP in 1972. It is why John Doerr backed Google in 1999 despite the risks. It is why Mamoon Hamid joined KPCB in 2017 to rebuild the firm. The next chapter of Kleiner Perkins' story has not been written yet. But if the past 53 years are any indication, it will include brilliant successes, painful failures, unexpected plot twists, and contributions to technologies that shape how humanity lives, works, and thrives. That is the Kleiner Perkins story. Messy, human, consequential, and still unfolding.